Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on when you watch this. My name is Tamani Mwandani. I am the founder of the Black Gold Nation, the founder of the Grow for Care Alliance here in Houston, Texas, and the chairman of Paid Texas Political Advocates for Independent Democracy. I'm making this video because an associate of mine sent me a video of Mr. Phillip Scott of the African Diaspora News Channel, I think is what it's called. He made a video about Project 2025, extremely irresponsible, ill-informed, ignorant, and very dangerous. So much so that I felt compelled to make a video response. I was going to just do a verbal response as I did to a video he sent me with Tariq Nasheed doing the same ignorant crap. But given the length of this video, I felt like I needed to make a video response easier to share and easier for people to refer back to. So I'm going to share my screen, jump right into the presentation, and just zoom through this thing. It's very unfortunate that we have people who consider themselves to be news persons, influencers, commentators, whatever. From my perspective, whenever you're dealing with something that's as serious as this is, and if you take time to research it, you'll see that it's very serious, then you shouldn't be putting out information that is not correct information, that's not well informed and researched, because that's dangerous, that's irresponsible, and it's dangerous. And that is why I made this video. So I'm going to share my screen, zoom through the video, zoom through the presentation, and hopefully it will be beneficial to everyone who has seen it, and anyone who does watch his actual video. Hopefully my commentary of this video will pop up alongside it or near it, and you can watch the rebuttal, because his actions are extremely sad, to say the least. So with that note, I'm going to jump right into it. The Black Gold Nation presents a From the Grassroots response to irresponsibility, ignorance, and dangerous messaging. The flow of the presentation, I'm going to deal with this thing in 5 areas. The top 10 red flags coming from Mr. Scott. The first one let me know that it was going to be downhill, because he states that he didn't even read Project 2025, and that is not even trying to read it, which is, again, sad when you consider yourself to be someone who's trying to give information to Black people specifically, but other people in general. Number 2, his ignorant, irresponsible, and dangerous statements. That's going to be the longest part of the presentation, because I am going, of course, I watched his video, and I am commenting on the ignorance, irresponsibility, and dangerous of his statements line by line. What's already happened, how this is going to affect Black people. Since he says repeatedly that he doesn't see how this is going to affect Black people, I deal with that by the numbers from a high level. And our From the Grassroots response, I never, ever do a public anything without trying to clearly convey our position on that thing, and of course providing solutions. But people like Mr. Scott and Tariq Nasheed as well, they put out garbage information with no real solutions attached to that information, which for us is a non-starter and something that, of course, we do not need. I want to give 2 quick shout-outs, thank yous and shout-outs to people who have noted what Mr. Scott has done and responded to it. There was a brother from the YouTube channel, Javin, I'm assuming I'm pronouncing that correctly, Javelin Bullets, who said that he called Phil a name. I can't remember exactly what he said. It made me chuckle, but he called him out on this BS and this crap. And of course, some of the people, several persons, to my surprise and delight, several persons in the comments section were calling out Mr. Scott's video. A lot of them were saying that he was absolutely incorrect. But sadly, of course, that wasn't the majority. Most of the people, as it was with Tariq Nasheed's video, most of the people in the comment section were buying his crap and saying that it's not a big deal, it's a Democrat hoax, it's the boogeyman. And of course, none of that is true. And after I am done, hopefully you will see what I'm saying. And at the end of the day, if nothing else, do your own research and come to your own conclusions. What is the Grow for Care Alliance? A connected community is a strong community. Regardless of who you are, what you do, where you work, lounge, play, or pray, everyone has a need for connectivity. The individual to opportunity, the family to support, the community to assistance, the business to contracts, the nonprofit to investments, the politician to his or her constituents, the government office to its citizens, or the corporation to its customers/clients. We all have a need, regardless of where we are within or on the circle of community, have a need to connect. The Grow for Care Alliance, generating real opportunities to win for community action results empowerment. This alliance is the hub of the many bridges that we need to connect as a community on whatever level we currently exist on and how we choose to connect. If you want more information on the Grow for Care Alliance, you can go to our website at growforcare.org. So what is Project 2025 and why is it so dangerous? The creators of Project 2025, they want to give Donald Trump more power than any other president has had in the history of this country. They want to give Donald Trump direct control over all 15 national departments of the executive branch, thereby affecting the lives of millions. They want to create a government whereby the president has no checks or balances, i.e., a fascist dictatorship by definition. They are serious, they are entrenched, they are mobilized, they are organized, and they're very well funded. When they say by any means necessary, they mean it. We're just talking. So these are the top 5 reasons why Project 2025 is so extremely dangerous and why we absolutely need to be paying attention. Project 2025 will eliminate and/or relocate the jobs of over 50,000 federal employees. It will reverse hundreds of years of anti-discrimination progress. It will eliminate the Department of Education and redirect billions from the public education system to private and nonprofit education systems. It will eliminate billions from the federal food programs for the young, elderly, and poor. It will impose additional work requirements for Medicaid recipients. It will criminalize abortion, including the abortion pill. It will revoke LGBTQ plus protections and criminalize discussions of LGBTQ issues. It will reverse student debt relief efforts. It will reclassify over 500,000 dreamers to illegals, making them eligible for deportation to a country, I might add, they've never been to. It will abolish affirmative action and prosecute institutions for diversity, DEI programs. It will gut environmental regulations and clean energy initiatives. It will censor the internet and criminalize pornography. It will deploy the military for domestic law enforcement and illegal immigrant roundups. It will create a wider gap between the haves and the have-nots and make it impossible to close that gap. It will, quote-unquote, Christianize America, and that's not what you think it is. And it will create total chaos, and so much more. So again, Project 2025 is something that we should be paying attention to. It is not something that we should be ignoring, and it is most certainly not a scare tactic or the boogeyman. The top 10 red flags. Why you shouldn't be listening to Phillip Scott about Project 2025. Number 1, he admits, amazingly, to not reading the actual Project 2025 document. Yes, it is almost 1,000 pages. No one will read it in one sitting, but if you're trying to give intelligent commentary to a document that is that long, then you need to take time to read it or do what we've done here at the Grow for Care Alliance and build a team to break it down. But that's for someone who's really trying to give the Black community something that they can use. How are you going to offer intelligent commentary if you haven't read the document? Number 2, he's reading from a document produced by a third party about Project 2025 to give its analysis and critique. So he's not even coming from a solid source of what's in Project 2025. He's coming from a third party, and the third party he's coming from actually prompted me to write a book for the Black community, a brief book, which I'll get to on the last page of this presentation, and it's free. Number 3, from the third-party document, not the actual Project 2025 document, he says he did a search. And because he didn't see the word Black in his search, he's not concerned that Project 2025 is going to affect Black people. Amazingly short-sighted, ignorant, and dangerous. Number 4, due to his stating the above, he obviously doesn't understand the mindset of the creators of this system. He doesn't understand that they don't always tell you straight up what they're going to do. they speak in coded language oftentimes. Why you shouldn't be listening to Phillip Scott about Project 2025. Number 5, he repeatedly states, I'm not going to read 900 pages for y'all. If you want to go read 900 pages, you go do it. I'm not doing that. That'll take days, and I don't have time for that. Reading is fundamental. Reading is fundamental, but he's not going to do that for his audience, which is just bad service if nothing else. Number 6, he calls Project 2025 a wish list. It's not a wish list because things have already begun to happen. And as he does not know, which most people don't know, this is an update. This isn't the first edition of Project 2025. This document, this is the 5th. The first one took place under Ronald Reagan in 1981. Number 7, he doesn't understand the difference between fear and intelligence. Paying attention to what your enemies are doing isn't fear. It's intelligent. The top 10 red flags continued why you should not be listening to Phillip Scott about Project 2025. Number 8, he has yet to accept that Trump is a habitual liar. Whatever is on Trump's website doesn't negate Project 2025 as the main creators came from his administration, and they're still working to get him elected. Number 9, he obviously doesn't understand the philosophy, system, and game of capitalistic white supremacy, racism, and he is extremely confused on the players in this game, in this system, those that created this philosophy, and the many levels that they operate on. And number 10, Mr. Scott has yet to accept that Trump is an habitual liar, whatever's on his website. Well, that's a repeat. Okay, main creator from the administration, they're still working to get him elected. Okay, amen. So the top 10 red flags continued. Do your own research. Don't take Phillip Scott's word for anything when it comes to Project 2025. Don't take Tariq Nasheed's word on anything when it comes to Project 2025. Do your own research. There's a lot of it out there. More of it comes out every day. I started doing my research from the perspective of the Black community about 2.5 months ago, and I've been doing things to make the Black community aware for about that long. I've already compiled a number of videos on our website, growforcare.org/project 2025-learn-more. It's already there. I think we have about 11 videos, but of course you can always do your own research. The videos that we have are videos that other people have done to make it a little easier, but do not take this quote-unquote this brother's word for Project 2025 because he has no idea what he's talking about. And his statements, as you will see here, they are extremely ignorant, irresponsible, and dangerous. This is the first page, number 1. He says that Project 2025 was written by the Heritage Foundation. It was not written by the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is spearheading the effort with over 100 conservative white think tanks and 2 conservative Black groups. I was surprised to learn that there were 2 conservative Black groups involved, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised. He doesn't seem to understand that what happens to targeted minority groups could very well happen to Black minority people, a Black minority group. So just because you don't see the word Black, Mr. Scott, doesn't mean that the things that they're talking about won't affect Black people, and that doesn't mean that they won't target Black people. As Angela Davis said, if they come for me at night, they will come for you in the morning. Brother Scott doesn't seem to understand propaganda, spin, and information manipulation. Just because something is stated or not stated on Trump's website, although Trump is a proven habitual liar, we're supposed to believe the verbiage on this website? I don't think so. Mr. Scott's ignorant, responsible, and dangerous statements. Number 2, he reads 10 major bullet points about Project 2025, glosses over the seriousness of all of them, and stops to talk about the 9th one, which deals with illegal immigration. What about the previous 9? After reading the above information, he moves further into the document, and he makes light of the seriousness, which he does multiple times, of the issue by posing the question, is anyone scared yet? Does any of this scare you? Are y'all scared so far? Again, do your own research. And the more you research, the more you will realize how serious this is. I'm not trying to scare anyone, but sometimes fear can be healthy because it may prompt you to do something. Mr. Scott states that, quote, manipulating data isn't going to affect Black people as a whole, end quote. Manipulating or not tracking data allows others to not track discrimination based on race or sex. Data manipulation allows them to say racism or prejudice doesn't exist because, quote, that data doesn't show that, end quote. Data manipulation, Mr. Scott, is another big deal of Project 2025, because if they're not tracking the data, there's no way for us to prove discrimination. And of course, we already know that discrimination still exists in America, especially when it comes to Black people. Mr. Scott's ignorant, irresponsible, and dangerous statements. Number 3. He jokes about the section heading, making it harder for Americans to make ends meet, as if that's not a serious and very real issue. Because he, Mr. Scott, didn't grow up with government assistance, because they had to, quote, get it how they could get it, end quote, he glosses over the fact that Project 2025 will make it harder for people already struggling to survive and make ends meet. Mr. Scott glosses over the elimination of Head Start. He states he doesn't know why they would want to do that, but never dives deeper into the impact that would have on the Black communities. But he says repeatedly that Project 2025 isn't going to affect Black people. Mr. Scott downplays the seriousness and severity of, quote, reproductive rights and healthcare. Ignorant, irresponsible, and dangerous statements and conclusions by Mr. Scott, page 4. Amazingly, he asks how medication abortion changes will affect Black people when Black women, for various reasons, are one of, if not the largest group who participates in and or with abortions. And again, this isn't going to affect the lives of Black people. He jokes about Project 2025's desire to, quote, embolden racial discrimination in everything from housing to education to employment, end quote, by stating, quote, so you're going to roll back the Fair Housing Act, end quote. Yes, Brother Phillip, that's what they're planning to do. They're planning to not only roll back the Fair Housing Act, they're planning to roll back a lot of rules, regulations, and policies and laws as relates to things that poor and disadvantaged and oppressed people need to make their lives worth living. So that's exactly what they're planning to do. And you see, this is the problem. This is what happens when you're too intellectually lazy to read because something is too long, or you don't want to make time for it. This is the danger of listening to Mr. Scott and anyone like him, which is why you shouldn't. He makes light of Project 2025 proposing cuts to environmental and climate change regulations by saying, quote, but you need power, folks. Look, I come from the petrochemical industry. You need power, period. Needing power is one thing, but cutting deregulation and cutting environmental and climate change regulation is not healthy. Regulations is not healthy for anybody. Unless, of course, you're going to live somewhere else, or these regulations are going to affect other people and you don't care about those people. Number 5, the 5th page as to why Mr. Scott's statements are ignorant, irresponsible, and dangerous. So since cancer alleys currently exist, we should ignore the fact that the authors of Project 2025 want to see them increase? Mr. Scott acts as if just because a problem exists, and this document he's reading from talks about the increase of that problem, we should not pay attention to that problem getting worse. He states that enabling, quote, discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identification, end quote, excludes Black people. But how can this be, Brother Phil, if there are Black people who fall under or into this sexual orientation or gender identity category? But again, this document doesn't affect Black people. Amazingly, when he comes across something that will affect Black people, he cherry picks and glosses over it. Why? Because the brother didn't read anything. When he comes across something that he thinks is a bad idea for anyone to cut in or do away with, he doesn't connect it to Black people, which is supposed to be his big thing. And he doesn't talk about how, as Black people, we need to mobilize and organize against that thing. He simply moves on. Why? Because he didn't read it. On the section of the document that he's reading, cut federal loan programs that help parents of college students, graduate students, and immigrants afford affirmative of higher education, end quote. He states, if they remove illegal immigrants, I'm fine with that. But he doesn't understand that this will affect Black people. Why? Because Black people get loans to go to school. The 7th page as to why Mr. Scott's statements are ignorant, irresponsible, and dangerous. Amazingly, he confuses or equates an incoming president replacing an outgoing president's staff with what the Project 2025 document states they want to do. He reads the heading, quote, replace nonpartisan federal employees with partisan loyalists, end quotes. And he's completely confused by that statement. They don't mean replace the staff of the president, Mr. Scott. They're talking about federal employees, the people who make the nation work, being replaced by Trump loyalists because during his first presidency, those persons, those federal employees, they stopped them from doing a lot of things that would have been illegal. What kind of country will we have if those stopgaps aren't there, which is what the creators of Project 2025 are trying to do. Remove those stopgaps. And Mr. Reading is Fundamental, they're talking about replacing 50,000 of those jobs. And you don't think Black people are in that number of 50,000 federal employees? But this doesn't affect Black people because it doesn't come out and say Black. Mr. Scott glosses over forcing career experts out of government by relocating federal agencies. What this means, Mr. Scott, Mr. Reading is Fundamental, is that they're planning to not only replace these 50,000 people with Trump loyalists, but they're going to keep their loyalty via those government jobs. Those government jobs, which they're going to move to their towns in the Midwest where the population is a majority white. Think about the persons that participated in January 6th running the U.S. government. That's what they are trying to do. Put that group of people in government jobs to help Donald Trump run the country. But this is not going to affect Black people. Mr. Scott glosses over the heading, quote, administer ideologically biased or discriminatory tests for federal workers, end quote. And he asks the question, but what does it have to do with Black people? How many Black people work for the federal government, Mr. Scott? This is why reading is most certainly fundamental and why you should read before going public and spewing your ignorance. Page 9, sadly, he goes to Trump's website, reads what the words say, and touts Trump's desire to take care of the veterans. Trump has repeatedly disrespected veterans, and per Project 2025, they're planning to dismantle the VA. But of course, Mr. Scott doesn't know that because he doesn't read anything. While on Trump's website, he speaks about getting rid of the Electoral College, which should be done away with. But because he doesn't read, and he doesn't understand the philosophy of those that run this system, he doesn't know that the Electoral College, they're looking to bring that to the states because they want to make sure that they can never be replaced or moved out of office once they get in office, and the they would be the Republicans. Amazingly, Mr. Scott poses the question, what more could the Heritage Foundation or the Republicans do to Black people that has not been done right now in 2024? What could they actually do, end quote. Shaking my head. Project 2025 is what they could do, brother. It's what they could do. And trust me when I say things can get a lot worse. And hopefully, maybe you'll watch this and learn a few things, go back and read, apologize to your viewers, and then make a video that's actually going to help Black people. Amazingly, Mr. Scott goes to Trump's website and says, I don't see anything in here where Trump says he's going to harm Black people. So he's just going to come right out and say it, right, Mr. Scott? He's going to say, I'm going to harm Black people. It don't work that way, brother. Mr. Reading is Fundamental is expecting honesty from a guy, Trump, whose charity was shut down as a fraud, whose fake university was shut down as a fraud, whose business was convicted of multiple felony fraud accounts, whose CFO is literally in jail, who had one personal lawyer put in prison and the other has lost his law license, who's been charged under the Espionage Act for what he was doing with classified documents and information, who was found liable by a jury for sexual assault, who's been charged with more than a dozen felonies under a RICO indictment in the state of Georgia, and more indictments are to come in other states, who's been found guilty by another jury of over 30 felonies for which he's now awaiting a prison sentence. And he has led an insurrection to overthrow the government, and he still hasn't apologized to the Central Park Five. This person is who Mr. Scott is expecting some honesty from on his website. But he considers himself to be someone who has something to offer Black people in this arena. I say, go back and read, brother. Make an apology and create a video that's going to help Black people. Page 11. Mr. Scott repeatedly, incorrectly, makes a statement that Democrats are trying to scare Black voters with Project 2025. But obviously, the brother doesn't fully understand that this is not a Democrat Party document. The Heritage Foundation is a conservative think tank. And again, this is the 5th edition. The first one was for Ronald Reagan in 1981, who was a Republican. They update their plans, brother. They update what they want to do. They recalibrate and change things. This is a living, breathing document that they are using to implement and create a new kind of America that, surprise, surprise, is going to affect a lot of Black people. Black, brown, and poor white people. When asked about Black people in Trump's cabinet, Mr. Scott names 3 people and then makes the asinine statement that, quote, most Black people ain't worried about a cabinet, end quote. Just ignorant. He compares Project 2025 to Y2K as if to say it's not really real. He states that Project 2025, quote, has nothing to do with us being Black people specifically. Mr. Scott, it may not be about us, but it is most certainly going to affect us. And he states that Project 2025 is another trick. The Democrats have nothing. And the last page of why Mr. Scott's statements are ignorant, irresponsible, and dangerous. He incorrectly states that the majority of Black people don't get student loans, while mocking the fact that the authors of Project 2025 want to make it more difficult to get those student loans. So he makes fun of Black people. Well, he incorrectly says that Black people don't get student loans, and then he makes fun of the fact that those student loans are going away, which is absolutely amazing. Mr. Scott talks about the importance of renewable energy, but failed to see the seriousness of, because he didn't read anything about Project 2025, of them wanting to do away with the government rules and regulations per the environment. They want to relax and or eliminate environmental safety standards, and they want to cut funds for renewable energy jobs. And of course, just like Tariq Nasheed, Mr. Scott offers no real or tangible solutions for Black people, a community he purports to want to represent, and he's all about per his channel. But he did find time, surprise, surprise, to push his Ethiopian trip, which I ask affects Black people in America how? So 2 critical points and 1 critical question for Black people to ponder, for Black people to think about as it relates to Phillip Scott and Tariq Nasheed. Point number 1, Tariq Nasheed and Phillip Scott collectively have a subscribership of almost 2 million people. It might be over 2 million. We can presume that most of them are Black people, Black and some brown people. Point number 2, for people who don't vote as nearly as much as we should, that's a lot of influence. That's point 1 and point 2. The 1 question, who sent you, Mr. Scott? Who sent you and Mr. Tariq Nasheed? Who sent you to spread such irresponsible, ignorant, ill-informed, short-sighted, and very dangerous information and messaging to Black people? 2 critical points and 1 critical question that we need to think about and ask ourselves about Mr. Scott and Mr. Tariq Nasheed. What's already happening? This is how we know Project 2025 is real, despite Brother Scott's ignorance, despite the fact that he didn't read, but he wants to do a video. This is how we know this thing is real. The rollback of civil rights policies, regulations, and laws have already begun to happen. The elimination of federal oversight discrimination officers already begun to happen. And everything that you're about to see, it's in the Project 2025 document. Had the brother read it or done a little bit of research, he would have known this. The elimination of the social safety net, there's food, medicine, and medical support for those that need it. The elimination of access to quality public and college education. The attacks on teaching true American history. That means that they're taking out all the Black stuff and saying that things like the slaves were immigrants, underpaid workers. The attacks on access to quality and healthy food, more aggressive measures to incarcerate Black and brown youth, the criminalization of abortion and anything connected to abortion, the criminalization of homelessness, more aggressive attempts to limit, restrict vote, and to limit and or restrict voting rights. And this is just a few. Again, as he does correctly state, it's almost 1,000 pages. So it's much more than that. But we know Project 2025 is real because these things have already begun to happen. And they want to increase them at a more rapid rate. Why? Because they're trying to create a new America that is going to affect Black people. Why? Because we live here. The main testing grounds for Project 2025, if you want to see what this thing is going to look like nationally, pay attention to what's happening in Texas, what's happening in Louisiana, what's happening in Mississippi, what's happening in Alabama, Georgia, Florida, North Carolina. It's happening in all over the country, specifically in states where Republicans have a supermajority, which means Democrats can't stop them from doing what they want to do. So it's happening around the country. But specifically, if you want to know how this thing is going to look once it's all said and done, then pay attention to these states, because these things per Project 2025 are happening in these states. Now, Mr. Scott repeatedly states, due to his own ignorance, due to the fact that he didn't read the document at all, and he didn't even do a little bit of research, which is not only disrespectful to Black people, which is not only irresponsible to Black people and his audience, but it's just sad, and it's extremely dangerous, because we have a very serious threat to the lives and forward progress of our people. And he's saying to Black people, this is no big deal. Don't worry about it. Ignore it. Don't pay attention to it, which is why I asked the question, who sent you, brother? Who sent you to put out this kind of information to Black people, knowing that Black people don't vote? The one legal thing we have that we can still use to move the Black needle forward in a positive direction is our vote. And you're putting forth information that's taking our eye off the ball and not being engaged in a very serious threat to not just the lives of our people today, but the lives of our children and our children's children who still live in this country. So since Mr. Scott repeatedly asks the question, how does this affect Black people? And he repeatedly makes the statement, I don't see how this affects Black people. Let me break it down to you, brother, from a very high level, but the numbers I'm going to give you are going to be in the millions were you to tally them, but this is just a high level. How Project 2025 is going to affect Black people by the numbers. Eliminating Head Start. You did comment on that, but you didn't dive any deeper. 54% of the 39 million children in this country who benefit from Head Start are Black. Eliminating access to fair housing. 37 to 46%, depending on the program that they are trying to work with, of these families that work with HUD for fair housing are Black. Eliminating access to food quality. 48.5% of children who benefit from WIC are Black, and 1.5 million families that benefit from AFDC, food stamps, are Black. Decreasing the social safety net. This is access to food, access to medical attention, access to Medicaid, access to insurance, access to medical attention. This is going to affect hundreds of thousands of Black people, if not millions. Criminalizing abortion. 40% of the women in the United States are Black that in some way, in some form, in some fashion are connected to an abortion. Lowering the age of a child to be tried as an adult. Again, pay attention to those states, Louisiana specifically, as it relates to what they're doing to lock up Black children as adults sooner. They're lowering the age by which they can lock up a child and put them in prison. They're not trying to find solutions and or answers to stop the criminal behavior and or stop the crime. They just want to lock our children up. Hundreds of thousands of Black children affected, Mr. Scott. Increasing the barriers to vote. Millions of Black people affected. Eliminating access to quality public and college education. Millions of Black people affected. The attacks on teaching true American history. Hundreds of thousands affected. Eliminating over 50,000 federal jobs. 18.2% of those good federal jobs, Mr. Scott, are held by Black people. A country where Donald Trump is a dictator. Millions of Black people affected. This is why we don't pay attention to ignorant Black people. Self-proclaimed, self-professed ignorant Black people who don't want to take the time to read and or research anything. So they go to a third-party document and they skim through it and say to Black people, this is hyperbole. This is the boogeyman, like Tariq Nasheed said. This is them trying to scare you. No, Mr. Scott, this shit is real. And it's real because it's already happening. But people like you are a problem for Black people because you put out bad and incorrect information that will have a people, again, who already don't vote enough and I read the comments on both your video and Mr. Nasheed's video. Black people who are removing themselves from paying attention to this very important document, saying that it's not a big deal and they're not going to vote and or pay attention. Bad move on your part, Mr. Scott, which is why I asked the question, brother, who sent you to do that? So the same document, amazingly, interestingly, the same document that Mr. Scott was reading from, I was also sent that document. I know what's in it because I read it. But when I read it, because of how I'm built, I guess I'll say, it prompted me to produce my own document. With two caveats that I've never seen in any other document or video that's out there about Project 2025. Number one, I produced my own document from the perspective of grassroots Black people. Why? Because I'm a grassroots Black person. And number two, I produced a document, as I said initially, I don't put out anything that don't have a solution connected to it. So I produced a document that's from a grassroots Black perspective and a document that has solutions. So this is a 44-page booklet and guide about Project 2025. It's easy to read. The analysis is easy and the bullet points are very clear. There are over 30 practical and realistic individual, family, and community-oriented solutions from the Black community perspective, and it's 100% free. All you have to do is go to our website and download the document for yourself. If you like what you read, if you learn something from what you read, if you appreciate us putting in the effort, then become a member or make a donation. And if you don't want to do that for whatever reason, take the solutions that we're offering and do something. Because like I said initially, when they say by any means necessary, they mean it. Most of the time, Black people just talking. And if we want to have an opportunity to ensure that this country is not a country that is 100% oppressive to our children and our children's children and every generation of Black child to follow, that they are not born into a caste system that they cannot get out of because it's a different kind of America, we gotta do something. But of course, we can't do something if we don't understand what to do. That is why I took the time to write this brief 44-page document. I'm proud of it because, again, it clearly conveys what this thing is. As Mr. Scott did correctly state, it's the document, Project 2025, is almost 1,000 pages. I didn't do what he did because I am seriously trying to move the Black needle forward. What I did was, what you can also see on the website, I compiled a team of Black people, assigned them certain sections of Project 2025, and we held an event, a Juneteenth event, actually. And each of them spoke of a different aspect of Project 2025, because I know, like Brother Scott says, Black people aren't going to read it. I don't know why he would say was not going to read it. That was just stupid to say. Black people aren't going to read. Most people aren't going to read it. I can't afford to not do something because my people don't read. I can't afford not to do something because it's too long. I can't afford not to do nothing because not only do I have children, but one day my children are going to have children. I'm connected to too many Black people with children. I'm a part of a tribe of Black people who want to do something to ensure that their children have a life that's worth living, by which they are not powerless. To ensure our children have something, we have to build something, and no one is going to give it to us. When I received that document from the one Brother Scott was reading from a very, very, very dear friend of mine, Brother Aswad Walker, beautiful, awesome, wonderful brother. He's one of our speakers. Matter of fact, when you go to our website, growforcare.org, GROW4CARE.org, click on Project 2025, scroll down. I think the very first option from that drop-down menu is our Juneteenth event. And you can hear our speakers speak about different aspects of Project 2025. And I've never seen that kind of event about this thing. So I know we are ahead of the curve. And of course, you can hear Brother Aswad speak, who is the fourth from last speaker did an awesome job as usual. He talked about the Department of State and what they want to do with that per Project 25. Surprise, surprise, which is going to affect Black people. So hopefully you learned something from this brief assessment, analysis of Brother Scott's video. I'm going to, once I post this to our YouTube channel, I'll put Mr. Scott's video in the description as well as Mr. Nasheed's, because we need to know who's leading Black people astray. We need to know who's not helping. We need to know who's just a liberation entertainer, as one of our mentors, Brother Craig B. Lee, would say. We need to know who looks like us, but who's not really for us, because they're just doing a bunch of talking. We can't afford that. If all you're doing is talking about the problem, and you're not doing anything to create a very real, tangible solution to the problem, then you are a part of the problem. And that's why I posed the question of who sent you. Because oftentimes, these people are sent by someone to do a disservice to our people, which of course we can't afford. So thank you for taking the time to watch the video. Hopefully you will go to our website, growforcare.org, click on Project 2025, scroll down to the booklet and guide. The damn thing is free. Again, if you appreciate it, if you like it, if you learn something from it, if you share it, whatever, become a member, make a donation, and or share with someone else. Project 2025 is too far along for us to stop. We can't stop it. We can slow it down, but we can most certainly start to maneuver ourselves, mobilize and organize ourselves to put something in place that we can build to protect ourselves from what they want to do from a federal level on down. They want to give a lot of power to the states. That's always been bad for us. But if we have control in the spaces where we are the majority, then we can buffer ourselves with layers of security for ourselves, our children, our family, our loved ones. And then we can do some things on a completely different level. So thank you guys very much for taking the time. Hopefully you learned something, and this has been useful for you. Again, the guide is free. It don't cost you anything but some time. So with that, always remember two things. No one can do everything, but if everyone does something, everything will get done. And absolutely, always, always, always remember that nothing is more sacred than the empowerment and freedom of Black people. Because if Black people aren't free, you're not going to be free. I'm not going to be free. Your children, my children, your family, my family, your loved ones, my loved ones are not going to be free because they are connected to a group that does not have empowerment and freedom. But if we put the group first, if we put the tribe first, if we put the nation first and build power for the group, for the tribe, for the nation, then our people will have power because they're connected to that group, to that tribe, and to that nation. On that note, again, thank you guys very much for taking the time. God bless, and I will see you guys down the road. Let's build Black people because nobody's going to do it for us. Amen. Good night. Good afternoon. Good morning. Have a good day. Bye-bye.